Welcome back to Gruber Motor Company. I'm Pete Gruber.
I'm Mark Schaffner, and good morning to the Gruber Morning Show.
And welcome TikTok, YouTube, Twitter, LinkedIn. My gosh,
Facebook.
yeah. And as always, let us know where you're coming in from, both what platform and what part of the world. It's always fascinating for our audience to see the wide range that these podcasts have. We're going to cover a number of things today, but one of the things that I wanted to start with was we had a great podcast last week, Wednesday, with the first Tesla mechanic, Jameson Cummings. And what came out of that was quite a revelation, actually. We are also selling a couple of really noteworthy early generation Tesla vehicles. They're both Founders VIN number 3, Model S, and Roadster. And one of the things that we found on the Model S was there were some panel gaps that were quite noticeable, actually, in the front hood and the rear deck, the trunk, and the doors. So we asked Jameson, you were there back in the day. What's this all about, And we were told by the customer, for example, that he tried to get them fixed by Tesla, and they said, well, this is really part of our production problem, and there is no solution right now to fix these.
Right.
So we asked him, what do you know about this? He says, well, I know quite a bit about it. It turns out that the engineer hired to do the molds for the Model S panels was familiar with steel stamping and not aluminum. And apparently aluminum has a spring back that you have to compensate for in your bend. Otherwise, it goes back and relaxes and goes back to a different parameter or spec. And once they figured that out, of course, they spend a whole lot more money getting the right molds and the right dies to stamp aluminum. So that was one explanation as to why these early Model S's had some panel gaps. And this particular customer that is, he had placed these two vehicles on our matchmaking site on our website for sale. We decided to just simply leave those imperfections. It's part of the history, and it's an artifact with the vehicle that makes it so rare and valuable.
Well, I'm thinking it's less an imperfection, and like what I like to say about some of my cars, it's personality for the car.
A personality, yeah.
It's something that's very unique that helps to make that car authentic in what it is.
Mm-hmm.
Mark, real quick, can you shift your mic a little to your right so when you're talking toward Pete, it catches you a little better?
Absolutely. How's that sound?
Yep, it's good.
So for those of you interested, of course, we created a video around this topic, and we took an excerpt from that hour-long Jameson podcast and created a short version of that on our YouTube channel. And if you want to see some more of the details as to why there are panel gaps with the early Tesla Model S's, it's out on YouTube, and it's one of the most recent videos there. Oh, there we go. We've got it up there. And, yep, there it is. It's the red, white, and blue, or the turquoise red and blue thumbnail. And we found it fascinating. People were always mentioning, oh, this is frustrating. Oh, why does this, And apparently the problem didn't get solved fairly quickly, definitely with Founders number 3, which was, a very early production car.
And Pete, real quick, you want to talk about the background image today?
Yes, the background that we have here, we love Sedona. I love Sedona. And this is actually a picture that is taken up at the Chapel of the Holy Cross, which is a Catholic church that's up there. And it has some elevation. We're looking south, and that house down below is somebody's house. It is magnificent, nestled in a very exclusive area with gorgeous scenery, 360 degrees. So you can see the red rock behind Mark and I. Again, it's indicative of Sedona.
And then I believe that's Cathedral Rock sitting back there in the very background.
It is, okay. All right, good to know. And people often ask, well, what's the reason for the red rock? And it turns out it's iron oxide. And if you go to any of that red rock and you scrape it, it becomes beige or white almost because you've scratched off the iron oxide. And then the next rain, of course, it begins to rust again. So that's the reason for all of that red in Sedona. All right, it looks like we have a YouTube question.
First we have a good evening from the Danish Genome Institute. Welcome back. Good evening from our house,
Denmark.
in Denmark.
Mhm.
And then on TikTok, Fractalologist. I see in your videos you have a warm hoodie. What brand is
What
it?
brand is it? Our power services team here gets a lot of clothing with the company logo on it.
Yes.
So I never know what the brand is because, by that time it has our embroidered company name on it. I really don't know, but I have a variety of them, whole bunches of them at home, and I kind of pick, one each morning. And then I have my wife also, who always looks for bargains, and she brings home the brands, like Polo. And but yeah, I wish I could help you with the brand. Now, we will be selling some of this stuff on our podcast and our YouTube channel. So stay tuned. It's going to start with sunglasses.
Yes, sunglasses and sunglass cases.
Yep. And
Working on those now.
then eventually going to the other swag from, hoodies and T-shirts and bumper stickers and you name it.
Yes, in fact, if I recall correctly, and Jesse can correct me if we're wrong, just like with the Roadster, the first of the sunglass cases are going to be called the Signature Series.
The Signature. Very
Yeah,
cool.
so we're gonna do a signature run and a founders run for us here in the studio too. So we're modeling it after Tesla.
Brilliant idea.
And real quick, Mark, we did adjust the size on those questions. Are you good on that?
Yes, I am.
Okay.
YouTube, Anders N. Hi, guys. Here from Odense, Denmark.
Welcome.
Good
Yeah.
morning or good afternoon for you. And then on TikTok, DMillie88. Do you guys build custom batteries?
We don't, but the closest I get to that is when the guys, the mechanics and technicians, bring me one of their expired tool battery packs. And I'll sometimes open those up and throw in some new 18650 cells. So I guess you could call that a custom battery build.
Yes, it is. Probably not quite as big as what we do with the cars, though.
Right. Yep.
On YouTube, Davil says, love your channel.
Well, thank you. And then YouTube, Nalvers53, welcome back. Revlon spelled backwards. We remember that now. When solid-state batteries become the norm, I'm assuming it's a matter of when, not if, but when that happens, will there still be a place in the EV landscape for lithium-ion batteries?
I think there will be, actually. We've got some stuff that's coming up on sodium-ion batteries later today, and the characteristics of lithium-ion batteries, of sodium-ion batteries, possibly of potassium-ion batteries in the future, and of solid-state batteries are going to have some differences. And so, for example, sodium-ion is not going to be as energy dense in all likelihood as lithium-ion will become. When sodium-ion batteries are made more energy dense, the same processes will be able to apply to lithium-ion, which will make it also more energy dense, for example. So, but there will be some differences, like sodium is a quarter of the cost of lithium to make those batteries. Graphene or other solid-state batteries, there are going to be cost differences. There's going to be charging differences, energy density differences, and I think the market is going to be big enough for there to be things like stationary energy storage in recyclable batteries that will have one type. Automobiles that'll have one type of battery, possibly shorter range city commuter or smaller cars will have one type of battery, whereas heavy trucks might have a whole different type of battery.
And the whole landscape of DC storage is changing so rapidly, it's difficult to predict where it's all going to go. We were talking last week about the aqueous battery.
Yes.
Which actually, uses water fundamentally. So yeah, it's difficult to really nail it down and predict.
So, but I do think the short answer is yes. I think there will still be a place in the EV landscape for lithium-ion batteries. And then on YouTube, we have a follow-up from our friends at the Danish Genome Institute. It says, as a follow-up from last time, will the higher densities and smaller pouch sizes on the way, like the Amprius battery, make it easier to revive roadsters. It seems such a pity to scrap them.
Yeah, the roadsters are pretty locked down in terms of the type of battery technology that they can utilize. So we're basically stuck with 18650 cells unless we completely revamp and replace the drivetrain. The difficulties are numerous. It's old electronics that aren't being recreated, firmware that is no longer has any developers working on it, and it would be nice to have a complete remake of the Tesla Roadster, and I think that's going to be the ultimate solution.
Yeah, I think you make a great point. It's not just the batteries that are aging, but the internal electronics in the car. Things such as HVAC controllers and what is the name of that controller that sits up under the dash?
The VMS, the vehicle management system.
Yeah, well, you have the VMS under the dash, and then up above the dash, we've started to have some components
switch
going
pack.
up. The switch pack, that's what I'm thinking of. And those have nothing to do with batteries, but everything to do with electronics. And as those electronics are aging, we see problems today that we simply didn't see 3 years ago.
Yeah, as they continue to age. Somebody is pointing out what's with the Camaro model. That must be TikTok. Wally's the man. Welcome, Wally. That is not a Camaro. He said, can I buy one? Is it RC Chattanooga here? Welcome. It is actually the new Tesla Roadster model. And this particular one was taken to the Peterson Auto Museum when they had their Tesla day about 2 months ago or so. And Franz von Holzhausen actually autographed it for us. So I don't know if that's visible in the image, but there's a Franz written across the hood of that car. So what we're using it for today is to hide the clamps that are behind it that hold the extension for the cell phone that is taking the TikTok video. But yeah, that would be. You can buy these, I believe, still. And if you look it up, it's the new Tesla Roadster model.
On YouTube, Anders N asks us, how do you get into the battery/car repair game?
Well, in 2014, when we decided to start repairing Tesla Roadsters, it was a natural progression because you have a DC battery system, and then you have the propulsion system or the electronics that drive the motor and the inverter. So we got into it by starting to repair the vehicles. As far as someone else wanting to get into the game, again, we've advised people, get yourself an EV. If you're a tinkerer, begin to take things apart, play with it, do some research, find out how they operate, join the forums. There are a lot of Facebook forums and other forums, and you can get a complete education from many of these online forums, and then just play with the car. That will give you probably the best OJT education that I can think of.
Oh, absolutely. I remember, we've talked to people in the past as well about how when we discovered that an electric vehicle was simply an uninterruptible power system where it powered the wheels instead of the office, that was kind of our light bulb moment.
Yep, very much so. It's amazing that in the critical power world, the technology in data centers is identical to what's in cars. And it sounds like our social media team is freaking out here. We've got a jet going overhead, I think. That's what it sounded like. It was a pretty cool sound, though. I don't know if our audience heard it.
Upstairs, I'm not sure what's going on.
Oh, they were rolling a chair, I'll bet.
Probably is.
Our studio here, by the way, is always evolving. We're now talking about building out a studio upstairs in this building, and it will be much more sophisticated than what we have here now. What we should do one of these days, guys, is take a camera off the tripod and just pan around our studio here to show you what we see that you're not able to see behind the cameras.
Oh, yeah, we'll definitely need to do that. On TikTok, Benner PI asks, will EVs ever get to the range and towing capacity of gas-powered vehicles?
Oh, very much so. Yeah. As the battery technology continues to improve, take the Ampere's battery, for example. You get twice the range, basically, with that battery system. And as Sandy Munro pointed out, well, rather than do twice the range, which, is handy, why not shave the weight in half and now you've got a performance upgrade. The car is not as heavy to move around.
Well, exactly. And we already know with the Tesla Semi out in the world now and actually hauling back and forth to places inside of California. So you've got the top of the line as far as towing and capacity goes. While the Ford Lightning has been panned a little bit in the press and with people about the fact that it loses a lot of range when it goes into its tow mode. Dodge earlier this year announced that their Ram EV Revolution is what they call it, or the Ram REV, is going to have 14,000 pounds of towing capacity and up to a 500-mile range on their extended battery. Even if you drop that range by half like the Ford does when they're towing, that's still 250 miles of range to tow 14,000 pounds.
Sure. And, you know, even if what you're carrying in the car, your DC plant or your DC storage system, isn't going to continue to grow exponentially, which I believe it will, of course, what is also growing exponentially is the amount of charging stations and the speed at which charging takes place, and even inductive coupling type charging where you're charging while you're driving. And then you have the solar cars that are coming out that are being charged while they're sitting there outside in the sunlight.
Right.
So yes, the range will quickly begin to exceed what an ICE vehicle is capable of.
Yeah, I don't think that's very far in the future, in fact. Heinrich at Connected Health Training is coming to us from YouTube. Good morning. He says, hello from Ireland. Actually, good afternoon to you. There are companies that convert classic cars to EVs using Tesla motors with all new electronics. Is that a way to go when they rise in value for Tesla Roadsters?
There's always this overriding concern about heavily modifying a collectible car. I remember in the 60s, the muscle cars. If you could get an original Hemi engine in a Mopar, a 426, and somehow continue to bore it and replace the pistons and the rings, that was much preferred to the much more efficient and more powerful crate engines, the 526 in a Mopar, for example. Because if you begin to make too many changes to a collectible car, it becomes a clone car, and that changes the valuation dramatically.
Sure.
What is yet to be tested is how an EV like a Tesla Roadster that has aging electronics, that are becoming obsolete, that have parts in them that are obsolete, what the acceptance will be of a conversion to a vehicle like that without affecting the valuation. And we don't know that yet.
Yeah, that's an interesting one, and I'm looking forward to seeing what happens with that. Another question from our friends at the Bion Danish Genome Institute. This one says, did you look into the merit of regenerative damping and capacitor battery buffering? The short answer is yes, I did look into that a little bit myself. I took time to understand a little bit more about regenerative damping and saw that it was, to my simplistic mind, I guess is how I'm going to say it, you're putting shocks with a coil and a magnet in them. And as you're going down the road, that coil and magnet is going to go up and down as you're hitting bumps and you're just going through your driving process. There is a chance that you would be able to regenerate somewhere between 20 and 70% of the energy that's getting lost. So there is a potential for merit there. I think the questions are coming in as far as the research goes in terms of the amount of weight it adds to the vehicle as opposed to a standard spring or strut set or shock set. And I did not look as much into the capacitor battery buffering, however.
And folks, this is an ancient technology. It was probably first introduced to folks in high school science class. Fundamentally, if you have a piece of wire and you have a magnet with a magnetic field, of course, that you can't see, and you pass that magnet by that piece of wire, you have induced a current in that wire and electrons start moving around. Now, if you want to maximize the amount of current, you take that piece of wire and you turn it into a coil, which just multiplies the surface area of the wire. And then when you pass the magnet, you get an even larger amount of current. So that's essentially what this technology is what it's utilizing is some very old technology, but it is scavenging and harvesting energy.
It definitely is. I was actually impressed even to be able to read the 20% energy recapture, because you think about 20% of 600 miles is 120 miles. So if I'm driving from here down to Texas in my Lucid Air Dream Edition that has 600 miles of range, maybe by simply changing out the type of shocks that I have, I could actually increase that range to 700 miles or more.
Very cool. Very cool. We have a nice little TikTok comment here from Wally's the Man. Welcome, Wally. He says, "Hey, guys, got to go make some donuts. Ha, ha, ha. Sent you a few likes. God bless you both, friends." Thank you very much, Wally.
Thank you very much. Trucker Alistair is joining us on YouTube. Good morning, Trucker. He says, "But Pete, please advise, if you play with this type of cars, it's 400 volts DC, and you have no second life waiting for you."
Yeah, it depends on how many lives you've used up. But yeah, it is 400 volts. By the way, that brings us into another topic here that I have on the news items, and it has to do with the conversion to 48 volts. Do you remember Tesla in their investor day announced that they are going with a 48 volt architecture in the vehicles, in addition to the propulsion pack, which they're still using 400 volts. In other parts of the world, they're actually going to 800.
Right.
But this 48 volt conversion had us a bit puzzled, because we are not aware of any manufacturers that are making 48 volt low voltage devices for cars. And we're talking about headlights, door locks, audio systems, the illumination items, motors in the seats, for example. And again, the concern there becomes, if you're not using a lower voltage for those kinds of devices in a car, you basically have lethal voltages that you're running around the car that could be accessible to occupants or definitely mechanics working on them. So
Right.
The standard had become with EVs that anything bright orange is a high voltage path. And you can see that if you open up your EV, open up the front panels, for example, you can see some orange in there. And the devices typically running off that would be things like your the AC compressor, which is electric, and at high voltage, it requires much smaller wire size than if you were to try to run it on 12 volts. But yeah, it is a concern. They will, I think the auto manufacturers will most certainly take precautions. But getting back to 48 volts for a moment, what we're waiting for is the ability to go on Amazon and buy some 48 volt audio systems or 48 volt headlights or wiper motors. And we haven't seen much of that yet, but it's coming, because, there's a whole market out there.
I think it might be some of this catch-22 type of inertia. Nobody wants to make it because it doesn't exist. Nobody wants to make the infrastructure exist because there's nothing for it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that Tesla's making that industry-leading step to move from 12 to 48 volts is going to give a push toward some of the makers of headlights and door handles and some of that stuff. And my hope is that will be enough to prime the pump for the industry as a whole. It seems like, with the additional information I've read on this, that everybody's waiting for everybody else to take the first step.
Yep. And of course, the first step is going to be very costly for the first OEM that decides to have some 48 volt wiper motors made or audio systems, because everything has to do with scale of economies. And if it's a small volume build, it's going to be a lot more expensive than if you scale the product and it's in high volume production, and
Right.
all the manufacturers are using it and sharing that scale of economies.
Right. So I think that's where Tesla is going ahead and taking that market leading position. A lot of the stuff that they use is kind of unique to their cars, and they now have the volume of production with 400 to 500,000 cars being shipped out each quarter to be able to possibly prime the pump there.
Yeah. We have a lot of great questions coming in. Let's try to run through a few of those before we go into the next ones. From YouTube, Thomas Curtis, Kia ora from New Zealand. That means hello in New Zealand, right? We learned that.
Yes.
Thank you. Welcome, and thanks for joining us again. He says, love the shades. These are actually Oakleys today, and one of my favorite colors. From TikTok, Benner P, very interesting. what was it on Laugh-In the last century? There was a German guard that always used to stand in a corner and say, "Very interesting."
Oh yes,
Remember
I,
that?
do, I remember that, and I don't remember who that was.
Yeah. YouTube, Scott Gruber, have you seen any information on wireless charging? That's a great name, by the way, Scott. I've heard that
Yeah.
before. Yeah. New information on not new information, but we're aware that there are companies that are fast and furiously working on this technology. It's also called inductive coupling charging. It's the same thing that we described earlier. When you pass a magnetic field by some wire, you get a transfer of energy that goes through the air, basically, like magic. And that's how this charging technology works. You have magnetic fields that are being coupled into coils of wire, and you get energy transfer, just like in a transformer.
Thomas Curtis on YouTube also has another comment for us. I think Maxwell had a regenerative suspension system in development.
Very cool. Okay, did
Very
not
cool.
know
I
that.
will take a note of that, and we'll see if we can find anything else from Maxwell on that.
You too, Big Ron. Welcome, Big Ron. You must have come in a little bit late. That is Sedona. It was taken up at the Church of the Holy Cross and has some elevation. We're looking south. Mark was saying that that's Cathedral Rock
Yes,
off in the
that's
distance
Cathedral
there.
Rock in the distance.
And what is so telling about this picture, a couple of things I liked is the red rock. You can see how red that rock really is in Sedona. We talked earlier about that it's iron oxide in the rocks that are causing the color, and you have to have a rain to regenerate that color if you've scratched some of that off. And then there's a guy's house down below there, which is just magnificent. And I have a hard time getting my head around living in a house that large because it's kind of like going to a five-star resort. And when you're in those places, you never conceptualize that this is all mine. You have one room in that five-star resort. This guy actually is able to say, this is all mine. And then you realize that you have to have landscapers. You have to have contractors. You have to have cleaning people and maids. You have to have pool people. And suddenly you're back to running a five-star resort fundamentally and acting as a general contractor.
Just about, yeah.
Yeah. But my hat's off to him. It's a beautiful place, and it's in one of the most idyllic places on the planet, in my opinion.
I agree. On YouTube, Rich Rebuilds channel. Good morning, guys. Good morning back to you. Welcome to the Gruber podcast this morning.
Then YouTube, Trucker Alistair says, 48 volts. You can buy some power tools, which are way better to handle. You guys rock, and a thumbs up. Thank you, Trucker.
Thank you very much. And then Nolver 53 on YouTube. Do solid state batteries have the same risk of fire after a collision as do lithium ion batteries? Great question. Have there been any advancements in fighting EV battery fires as well?
I'm unaware of advances. Copious amounts of water is still a lithium-ion battery fire, suggested method of extinguishing, and just continuously cooling down the batteries. And I always cringe when I see them throwing foam on there or using CO2 or halon. It generates its own oxygen. It's not going to work. But the newer batteries are definitely less impervious to combustion. And, the graphene battery, for example, Mark likes to mention they fired 9mm rounds into a pouch battery at a gun range and no fire. It continued to generate voltage. There was a meter hooked up to it. It's lithium that definitely has an issue with combustibility.
Yeah, definitely. Sodium as well is proving to be much less combustible than lithium when it comes to the battery technologies.
Mm-hmm. YouTube, Troy Meekoff, welcome. He says, curious to see what happens to aftermarket 12-volt accessories. I use my Model Y's 12-volt outlet all the time. I'm sure that during the migration, they will have both voltages available. And that poses another interesting concept. We may see two outlets in cars now, low voltage outlets, the 12-volt traditional, which was actually originally designed for a cigarette lighter. Mm-hmm. It's now being repurposed, of course, for the many or the myriad of other 12-volt devices, but I'm sure we'll see some 48-volt stuff popping up soon too, and some outlets or sockets for those.
Oh, I wouldn't even be surprised at all if you start to see more of a standard 48 volt outlet and step down transformer to 12 volts for 12 volt items. Just like even today, you can plug a little into your 12 volt cigarette lighter socket, a step up transformer that turns your DC 12 volt power into AC 120 volts.
Oh, an inverter. Oh, sure.
Just
Yeah,
a little inverter.
right. Here's an interesting question. TikTok, Gasp421, welcome. Do you guys drive Teslas yourselves? And if so, what year and models?
Well, yes, I do actually. You know, I happen to drive a 2012 Model S. I'd also, that is something that the company provides me. I also have and own a Volvo XC40 Recharge that my wife and I both like driving as well.
hmm And prior to that, at one point, you guys even had a
Kia Soul EV, yes.
Right.
And we drove that, loved it. It was a nice, really zippy little car. It was a 2015 and just loved it to death. That's one of the reasons that we decided to stay with EV when we decided to get something new.
As far as what I drive, I used to have a P90D Ludicrous. And then over a year ago, we let that out as a loaner, developed a battery problem, and I began to realize that I am like the cobbler's kids, never have any shoes, because there's always a customer that is a higher priority, and my car's been sitting there. But all is not lost, because I am the Tesla Roadster test driver. I'm the only one that I trust to do that. And we have so many Roadsters come through every week. I am constantly test driving Roadsters. Been doing that for a couple years or more now. So for me, it's a different color Roadster every 2 or 3 days or so, and thoroughly enjoy those cars, except when summer comes. We're going to be getting into the 114 degree weather again, and the Roadsters have this strange phenomena that when you're driving a Roadster and it's 114 outside and you're trying to use the AC, which by the way is anemic to begin with, it was never built for this kind of for these kinds of temperatures. But every once in a while, the AC shuts down inside the cabin, and the vehicle management system says, you know what? The occupant is not as important as that 1,000-pound battery that's sitting behind you, and we're going to redirect all of the cooling to that 1,000-pound battery at this point. So you sit in the cabin and you roast, even with the windows down, basically.
Oh, by all means. By all means.
Richard also drives one.
I sure do. Same as Mark. I don't know what year it is. I believe it's 2015. But a Model S that I leased through the company. Love it. It's
What is
phenomenal.
it? 85?
100D.
85. No, the
Oh, you got the 85 now?
I
Yeah.
had the other one.
Oh,
yeah, I had a 2017 100D, and I absolutely loved that. But my understanding is Mark is going to be getting that
I'll
one.
be inheriting that one pretty soon.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah. I had my fun with it. I enjoyed it. It's time for somebody else to enjoy it too.
Oh, this 100D was insane. It was white on white. It had white, soft leather seats on the inside, and when you sat in it, it felt like you were in your living room on a comfortable couch. It didn't feel like you were in a car.
Don't remind me, Pete.
I
Don't
can't
remind me.
wait.
Yeah.
I can't wait.
And then, of course, the dual motor, 100 kW battery pack. That thing did not lack power either.
Yeah, by all means. Mine is a performance, although I think it's a single motor. It's the performance mode. It's of all the various cars that I've driven that are EVs, that is one of the smoothest driving cars I've ever had. Even with it being a 2012 and an 11-year-old car, it still drives so incredibly smoothly.
I saw you trying to get on a freeway the other night. I don't think you knew I was back there, but man, that car really got up and went.
Oh, it does.
Yeah.
I love it.
So we've got TikTok from Jedi Mind Tricks. He says, has a green screen and not using it? Question mark. Unfortunately, Jedi Mind Tricks. In fact, use some of your trick or your skills to change that green screen if you can, or convince us all that there is something other than a green screen. We're still struggling with the streaming service that isn't giving us the ability to post a picture on the green screen for only TikTok. Go to
if you-
YouTube, and if you want the full experience and you want to see that Sedona shot, YouTube will, at this point, give you the full experience.
Yes. Smuggler has also come back to us and said, this is new. Headphones. Sorry, the time change has limited my engagement with y'all. Gotta go. Glad I got to see a few minutes. Smuggler, If you're still there, yeah, this is new with headphones. We've gone through and put some upgrades in our sound system. And so we got new microphones, new headphones. And I like the result.
Yeah. And we're, I think, trying to move it more toward the Joe Rogan experience. Isn't that part of it too?
Well,
No.
I mean,
Yes.
we're going for that professional look. We have the same headphones that Joe Rogan does, but primarily this is so we can bring you guys guests every week and not have the audio interference.
Yeah.
I thought that it was because we were unseating Joe Rogan as the podcast premiere
could
show.
Be. Could be it.
Okay. Okay.
But the guys once in a while mention, what about the whiskey and the weed? We haven't quite moved there and probably never will.
Yeah, I'm probably not to that anyway.
Although cigars aren't out of the question, right, Pete?
Well, you know,
good
I
point.
think there's a problem with YouTube. You know, alcohol, tobacco, and firearms. We
Yep.
would get delisted.
They get you demonetized
Yeah,
or
yeah,
kind of on YouTube's blacklist, so to speak.
yeah. Have to be careful.
So we're all stuck with the candy cigarettes then, right?
Yeah, The chewing
That'll
gum,
work.
yeah.
We'll bring the big league chew that's like the like dip, you know, but chewing
Yeah.
gum.
It looks like we have somebody from Germany, Alexander Müller, and the U has 2 dots above it, which is an umlaut, and it's pronounced Müller. He says, hello from Germany. He's from the Pfalz region of Germany.
Good
Welcome.
afternoon
Yeah.
to you.
Yes. YouTube Exploration says, why is Tesla now making 16-volt batteries? I didn't know they were. Do you guys know anything about that?
I haven't heard about 16 volt. I've heard that they are moving toward the 48, but I have not.
Mm-hmm.
That's something that we'll take a note on, and we'll see if we can get back to you on that.
Mm-hmm.
I was just gonna say, I think they're thinking about the 48 volts.
Probably the 48-volt battery. Well, in any event, yeah, update us, tune in again, or even in this session, and if you have new information, we'll certainly share it with the audience.
Yes. Now going back a little bit, Big Ron on YouTube says, "Sweet, thank you. I haven't been there in years, and I'm in Phoenix."
Mm-hmm. Well, stop by, get a tour. We give tours daily. I think I did 2 of them yesterday.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's always enjoyable for people showing up. Jiminy Stack is joining us, local EV godfather from YouTube. He says Kia Soul, it was terrible. He says the battery dropped 50 miles in one day. They had to ship it to California for a month to fix. I think you guys also had your batteries replaced under warranty,
We
right?
did.
We had
We
2 of them.
did.
Yeah. He said, we also had a controller shut down twice, had to repower to drive off the road to safety. It just had a fan for cooling, no liquid cooling. The dealers had no clue that there were 20 in Phoenix and had also failed batteries. You know, we find that with any of these new manufacturers that are, getting into the game, they're struggling with these types of issues.
Yeah.
But the good news is they're hanging in there and they're improving their product and they're not giving up and saying, well, we're going to continue to make hybrids or ICE vehicles. You know?
You know, I had almost the same experience as Jiminy when I first had my Kia. When we got it, we were told that it had been a brand new battery put in, if I remember right, because Gruber Motors had bought it from a
testing agency.
testing agency. They had put new batteries in it before selling it to us. And then I bought it personally from Gruber Motors. Within about 20,000 miles, that battery was toast. I was getting 40 miles of range, and it's supposed to be a 90-mile range battery. When I went in, I actually was able to take it here to a place called Mark Kia in Scottsdale. Although they were not an authorized EV dealership, they had an authorized EV mechanic on staff, and that guy was good. They were able to get the battery replaced in about 3 weeks. They did do some software upgrades. They also had to take care of the charging port and controller at one point. They did that under warranty as well. And that all happened when the car had just a little under 50,000 miles. When we traded it in, it was just right at 100,000, still charging to 92 miles, and it was a 90-mile battery. So the fact that it was still charged to 92 miles was still a great battery, and never had an issue with it after those initial warranty issues.
Yeah, Peter, my son, also has one of the
Yeah, he has
original
the
two.
twin. Yeah.
And that second replacement battery is still going strong, so they must have solved the problem.
I think they did solve the problem, but it took them until, probably late 2016. Dave from YouTube. Joe who?
I don't know what that means.
You're talking about Joe Rogan.
Joe Rogan, yeah.
Oh, Joe Rogan. Okay, all right.
We're unseating Joe Rogan.
That's right. That's our
That's right.
mantra from here on out.
Nolver53 on YouTube. I would buy Gruber Motors branded beer. Those shades on a can of beer would be awesome.
That's a great idea. Why didn't we think of
Yep,
that?
there's
Yeah,
another vertical for us.
there's another
There you
swag
go.
item to throw into there. Yeah, and of course it's going to have to be Bavarian beer, probably a Hefeweizen, something that I can drink.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes.
All right, so Facebook, Jiminy Stack, the Tesla lithium starter is 16 volts. Did not know that. All right, we're going to have to do some research
Yeah,
on
we-
that. We've
we
got
will
two
do some
people now
research on
chiming in.
that.
Yeah. Okay.
YouTube exploration says it's the small battery under the frunk and that some are now 16 volt. And Trucker Alistair has also chimed in and said on the Model 3 that some of the 12 volt batteries are actually being transitioned to 16 volt batteries.
Interesting. We should have known that.
We should have.
Yeah,
My-
we'll definitely do some research on that one.
Yeah.
My claim to ignorance or my excuse will be that when we're working on cars, we're working on the ones that have already come off of warranty.
Exactly. Yeah, we're working on the older Teslas.
So we do tend to be much more biased toward those.
Real quick, guys, one other thing I wanted to say about Kia.
Yeah.
Not sure if my camera's working. Let me check.
There
Hey,
it
it is
is.
working. But one other thing about the Kia is that Marquez Brownlee, who does the autofocus channel, he said the only thing he doesn't like about the new Kia EV6, is that what it is, I think?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's it.
Is that it has about 100 miles range. When you put it into its performance mode and you're really getting on it, it is super limited in range. Other than that, he said it's basically a perfect car. So it seems like it's a Kia thing with their battery tech.
Interesting. Okay.
That's a possibility with Kia having been in the EV space as long as they have. That's something that most people I don't think really realize, because the Soul is a 2014 car, and now they have the EV5, the EV6. I think I've seen maybe an EV9 or something like that. So they're building out an entire line of electric vehicles based on the experience that they have. Good comment, Jesse.
A lot more questions coming, but let me squeeze in a quick news item. Hiro Mitsuno is leaving the board of directors on the Tesla board, and nothing negative being said here. He said, I truly enjoyed my entire time there. He is stepping down. And if you remember in one of our other podcasts, J.B. Strobel is joining the Tesla board of directors. And I don't think there's necessarily a limit on the number of board members, but it would be interesting if this was just a swap.
Yeah, the corporate board membership concept, it's not limited. The corporation determines when it gets started, how many board members they're going to have to start with, and they can vote and decide that they want to have more board members, or they can vote to reduce the number of board members.
Mm-hmm.
It does appear that Tesla has just 3 members of their board right now, and Hiro Mizuno, it's stepping down. I think J.B. Strobel would be a great replacement. He's a longtime Tesla employee who has now transitioned out of Tesla, running his own company that does battery recycling. I believe we're working on his father's Roadster, correct? Jeff Strobel's Roadster. Great knowledgeable guy, good knowledge or great knowledge of what has been going on in Tesla for a long time, has the fiduciary responsibility that you would expect of a board member. And the board is really the entity that reports to the shareholders. They're the ones accountable to the shareholders. The board of directors is basically the boss of everybody at the company, including the CEO and president.
And they get to set compensation packages for the CEO, CFO, or the owners of the companies.
That's correct.
Pete, we're missing you on the mic a little bit there.
Okay, all right. And it looks like he's stepping down. And one of the reasons that Elon liked him on the board was they share a similar philosophy in their distaste for short sellers. In my mind, I've been an investor for 50 years, and the short selling is an investment strategy, nothing more.
Right.
Let's not forget that the stock market is a zero-sum game. For someone to win, someone has to lose. And so short selling, although there are people that are dead set against it and feel that it's unpatriotic in some way, it is merely an investment strategy, and you can make money when a stock goes up and when it goes down. There was a crazy thing I did in the 70s, which was called a straddled position. And if you see a stock that is volatile, that goes up and down regularly, you take two positions and you alternately liquidate the position that is more favorable at the time. So you can actually ratchet up as you're going. You're making money when it goes down, when it goes up. But anyway, I agree. J.B. Strobel will be a welcome addition to the Tesla team. He's familiar with the culture and very much familiar with the company, and definitely an astute individual.
Absolutely. It's important as well for these for companies, especially when they're publicly traded, to have a mix of employees and independent people on the board. JB Strobel, having been gone from the company for a couple of years now, fits that role of the independent board member very well.
And you mentioned JB's dad, Jeff. I was going to talk about that a bit tomorrow, but his dad lives on an island off of one of the Great Lakes, and he has a roadster, of course, as does JB, by the way. He has two of them that I'm aware of. Anyway, his dad's car got bricked, meaning the battery went dead. It was in storage on the island, and, there are always a host of reasons why these cars go dead. It took us 3 months to get that car off the island. Ferry was involved, tow trucks, that type of thing, to stage and coordinate it all. But fortunately, we got the car running within just a few weeks after it got to our shop. And what we found interesting was, and I think there's a picture of this, Jesse. If you go to tomorrow's podcast, the Roadster podcast, there's a picture of Jeff's Roadster. And what's so unusual about this particular Roadster is it's the only Roadster that we're aware of that has a radio antenna mounted on it. And it's on the rear deck. And the story went something like this when I talked to Jeff. He said, well, there's a particular radio station that I liked, but the reception was poor where I lived. So in order to, be able to hear that radio station, I had my mechanic throw an antenna on the Roadster. So
Oh, me darn.
All right, it's up there now.
there it is. Yep. And you can see it's the only Roadster we're aware of with an antenna. Now, what we've done in the meantime, the car is, I think it's a 2008. So it's about 15 years old, and there are a few sins on there. There was a luggage rack on the car for a while that dug into the paint, and, a few little scrapes here and there and some curb rash, and the things that normally after 15 years you get if you drive your car regularly. So it is now going through a complete upgrade. We're doing the body work on it, and he opted to close off the antenna hole and restore it to original. And instead of painting this, there are some really excellent opaque PPFs available now. It's a colored clear
okay.
bra, basically.
Yeah.
Very durable. It has, the properties of PPF protection, along with a deep shine and a very, any color that you want, basically.
Sure.
So this car is going to be done in a sterling silver with an opaque PPF, and it's going to be quite a spectacular car when we're done with it. It's going through the body work right now, fixing all the little sins on the car, but I think that JB's dad's going to be very happy with this car when we get done with it.
On TikTok, Van Goat Wagon has joined us today. Good morning. He says, other than cars, what does Tesla make?
Well, robots, right? Boring companies, tunnels,
Tequila,
right?
Cologne.
quads,
Well, if we're talking about swag, flamethrowers, you
flamethrowers.
got to throw that in there. And what I've noticed is, and I hope we get there eventually, any swag that Tesla picks up and puts their name on becomes not only extremely valuable but collectible within just a few weeks or months. I mean, they're selling empty bottles of Tesla tequila for $800 on eBay. Of quite
Well,
recently.
Pete, I have this. I'm gonna pull up
Yeah.
because you mentioned it earlier. Because TikTok can see that car. So we have the diecast Roadster, but then they apparently are also selling a version of the semi. We
That's
might need
come
to
out.
get one of those.
Definitely, yes.
Oh, yeah.
Yep, without a doubt.
Now, Tesla also, of course, makes their solar. I talked to a friend recently that said they were going to get the Tesla solar. And of course, you've got the Tesla Powerwall that goes along with the Tesla solar that goes on the roof of the house. So, yeah, there are quite a few things that Tesla makes.
You know, in passing last weekend, Doug was here, our maintenance guy, and he says, I'm getting Tesla Solar on my house. I priced it. They had the best price, blah, blah, blah. I went home and I told my wife that, and Monday morning she contacted Tesla, and we're now getting quotes from Tesla for solar. Now, I feel really remiss because, I'm in the EV business. I'm into alternative energy, sustainable energy, and we still didn't have solar on our house, and it's primarily because I work, 80 hours a week, and most of my time is spent here, so I don't have a lot of time to take care of the house. But
sure.
it looks like my wife has taken that over, and it looks like we're going to go with a Tesla solar system now.
I'd be interested to see how that ends up for you. I know that we do have solar on our house, and one of the more interesting things that I have found is that the time to plug in my car is 10 o'clock in the morning.
Really?
Well, sure. That's when the solar
Everybody's
energy
at work. Yeah.
That's when the solar energy is really starting to produce on the house. And so instead of getting 2 cents per kilowatt going to the power company, I simply capture that energy, put it into my car's battery. By the end of the afternoon, my car is charged, and I have a couple of hours where the solar energy is being sold back to the power company. Most of the time, the best time for me to charge is not nighttime, but is during the day now.
Interesting. Yeah. All right. Well, I'm going to come to you for tips once we get those panels up on the roof.
Okay.
TikTok. Matthew Rants. He says beans.
I think that was in response to, other than cars, what does Tesla make?
What do
And
they make?
he's suggesting that they make beans.
Thank you. I need you guys to help me sort out these
Yeah.
cryptic comments.
Now, Pete, based off of your previous statement, do you
Yeah.
think that Tesla could be successful in selling Tesla beans?
I think Tesla could be successful selling anything. Now let your imagination run wild here. I wanted to also introduce you guys to something. This is a book that is now available on Amazon. In fact, are we going to bring up the image?
Yep. 1 second.
And it is a guest that we're going to have here next week, Thursday. His name is Ingemar Anderson, and he wrote a book on the future of electric. We're mentioned in the book, and I was fascinated because the book is a short treatise of everything that the questions that people would normally ask if they want to get into an electric vehicle. And it's a kind of like those books, The Dummy's Guide.
Yeah.
Well written. It addresses the issues. It's not over the top technical and written in plain layman's terms. Next week, you'll get to meet Ingemar Anderson. He will be a guest on our podcast. But in the meantime, if you're interested and you wanted to pick up the book, we've thrown up the Amazon screen where you can purchase this book, and highly recommended.
It's also got a foreword written by a pretty notable individual.
There is a foreword by a notable individual. Let's see who that was. Let's see here. Pete Gruber. All right. I had to let the suspense build at that point.
Oh,
you know?
yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. Absolutely.
Tomorrow, by the way, we also have a special guest for the Tesla Roadster podcast. And, we found those, they started off a bit slow because, there are only 2,000 Roadster owners left in the world.
Right.
And a portion of them are on different time zones, so they're sleeping while we're podcasting. But we're beginning to gain some nice momentum, and it's sometimes after the fact. It's comments on the videos after we posted them. It might be emails that come in, but it's beginning to reach its goal, which was to unite the community a bit more. Tomorrow we're going to have Conrad Buck, who is actually one of the German Roadster repair shops. And we plan to have other people around the globe that have Roadster experience join these podcasts. And the fundamental reason is it's no secret that Tesla is scaling back their Roadster service capability because they just don't have the people anymore. But in the meantime, a lot of that knowledge is migrating to the aftermarket space, people like us. And I think it's important that we all unite and begin to collaborate and make the customer experience even better than it is. And that's the purpose of these Tesla Roadster podcasts. So tomorrow we will have Conrad Buck. He is in the middle of Germany. And, you know, Germany is kind of interesting. It's kind of like the United States. Every state is another country in Germany. So you've got Poland, you've got Czechoslovakia, you've got Belgium right there, and, you know, then Scandinavia across a little bit of water. But so anyway, plan to join us if you're interested in what his capabilities and what his shop can do. And as always, there are fascinating stories that come out of this. The history of Tesla is oftentimes discussed as well.
I'm really grateful that he's willing to do that because he's going to be coming on at 4 p.m. Mountain Standard Time, which is our normal podcast time. And for him, I don't know if it's midnight his time or if it's 1 o'clock in the morning, but
I think
it's
I think he
very
said
much
midnight,
the middle
right?
of the
Well,
night.
it's actually a 9-hour difference, so it'll be 1 o'clock.
1
for
o'clock
him.
his time.
Yep,
Okay.
and I sent him an email about that. Just so you know, speaking of time, we are at an hour.
Okay. All right. We've got some questions we'll get through, and we've got some good momentum here. So let's grab some of those, and we can save some of the news items for Thursday then.
Sounds good. Christopher Korn is on YouTube. Says, hello from Ohio. I recently discovered some gentlemen from Canada that are doing logging truck vehicle electric conversions, Edison Motors. They're using a diesel generator range extender.
Oh my God, that sounds like the T0, which was a electric sports car that was able to run 80 miles on lead acid batteries, and it had a tow hitch behind it. We have one in our shop actually that was pulling a Honda generator that would provide power after the batteries expired, because in 1997, when they made these, there were no charging stations. There was no charging infrastructure. The best shot you had at getting any kind of charging was going to a KOA campground and hoping that they had a 240-volt plug.
Right, right. You know, I think we've said something about Edison Motors in the past because that's the 5 guys with a logging truck in the background over in British Columbia.
Highly recommend you check out their website. What these guys do is, they take diesel logging trucks and convert them to electric. They've been popping up on my Instagram feed. I think the algorithms just naturally remember what you were interested in. But yeah, they are definitely tinkerers. They are innovators, and it's a great, entertaining watch to see what they're working on.
Absolutely. And then LinkedIn, Rolandus Rimdika. Hi, Pete, and the rest of the team. Respect to all your contributions to EV transportation, particularly Tesla. Trying your live stream, it's new for me.
Oh, well, thank you for joining us. And let us know where you're from, Rolandus. TikTok, Mark Pedersen 48. What do you do with it when it's done, when a battery is done, when it's dead? Well, the great part about EV batteries is that it is high-grade ore.
Right.
It can be 100% recycled. You have stainless steel, you have lithium, you have anodes, you have cobalt. And that's exactly what J.B. Strobel's new company is doing, Redwood Materials. They actually claim that they have a 0% waste stream. Now, you can't say that about any other recycling effort. So it is very planet friendly, and these batteries can be recycled endlessly. There is no expiration date. The only expiration date is technology improves. And as lithium goes away and new technologies emerge, hopefully those will also be 100% recyclable.
I wouldn't be surprised if they are at all. And we also even had within the last 2 weeks talking about, when an EV battery is considered dead, it's actually not necessarily dead.
Mm-hmm.
It just is that the battery doesn't fit within the parameters, the safety parameters of the automobile's vehicle or battery management system. And we had thrown up a picture of 25 or 30 EV batteries sitting in series inside of a container as stationary storage systems, because those systems had the ability to still store solar power and put it back onto the grid. So there's definitely life for EV batteries after they're used in cars.
Sure. The life had diminished sufficiently to where it wasn't usable in a car because the firmware didn't like the voltage level. But in a stationary power system, it's all about quantity rather than quality.
Exactly. Jiminy Stack on Facebook comments to us, Sean Shearer had found the Tesla lithium battery was set as a 16 volt. Since Sean also makes 12 volt lithiums, and he says, I have some of them in my Y and in my Bolt.
You know, you've had great success with that Omu battery. That's Sean Shearer's brand name. And by the way, Sean, if you're listening, I was trying to get a hold of you last week. We'd love to have you as a guest on our podcast. We always get questions about the early days. Sean was the first manager we hired to start the EV operation here. So if you're listening, we'd love to hear from you and get you on our podcast one of these mornings.
Yes. Now, when it comes to you and solar, Pete, Van Goatwagon had another comment. He says, by the way, you're also getting a gardener and a swimming pool.
Well, probably not a swimming pool. We don't have enough land left. I doubled the size of the house and used up everything on the east side. But the gardener is probably important too. I get in trouble with the HOA all the time because I'm not doing my landscaping properly. And what I need to do is let go of this notion that I need to do it all myself.
Sure.
It kills me to hire a contractor if I know I can do this, you know?
Yeah.
So YouTube, Juan Carlos Morataya Ramos. He says, hi from Guatemala. Nice to see you guys. Likewise. Thank you for joining us. YouTube, Exploration. Gigapacks, exclamation marks. That's probably going to be the future.
And it's another one of the things that Tesla makes that are not cars.
Mm-hmm. YouTube, DeVille, D-A-V-I-L. What an interesting show. Great Tesla stuff. Well, thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Come back. It's Tuesdays and Thursdays at 10 a.m. Mountain Standard Time.
And then TikTok, Gas421. Have you guys had to work on any Model 3s or Ys yet?
Yes, and the only time we see those is, since they're under warranty, is if the customer wants to deviate from the norm, like putting in an automatic frunk opener. And then oftentimes Tesla just refers us and said, you know, we can't do it, but there's a shop here in town that we trust. Send it over to Gruber Motor Company.
Yeah, I've seen a few different Model Ys and Model 3s come through.
Do you know that we have a Porsche Taycan in the service center right now?
I did not.
And it freaks out our customers, yeah. This one came in, it's under warranty,
Okay.
but it came in for a wheel powder coat. And it's sitting there on jack stands right now, and the wheels are at the powder coat are getting a different color.
Oh, I am sure that customers that come in for the tour take a look at that and do a double take.
And then we did a TikTok video, which was kind of interesting. We had a Model S sitting next to the Taycan, and both of the hoods were down. And we said, I wonder which of these two EVs has the largest frunk. So we opened up the Model S, and of course it was cavernous. There was even that microphore, or that the microwave section they call it,
Yes.
where you can put even more stuff. It was just cavernous. Then we go over to the Porsche Taycan, and we realize this thing is about this big. It's the size of a drink cooler. I don't know why it's that small. Maybe it's German engineering, over-engineering, and they needed to capture all that space for something. But we didn't open it up yet to see what's inside.
That's a good question. I don't know either. I can say though that the Volvo that I own, it has a frunk that's big enough to hold the charging cord, and that's about it.
That's it.
I was completely surprised when they opened it up and talked to us about this wonderful frunk, and I'm like, what frunk? There's nothing there.
So maybe Tesla has some advantages there, it sounds like. All right, a few more TikToks. Slappy White. The battery just doesn't identify as a battery anymore at 16 volts or at 48 volts. You know, that's the other thing I'm curious about. I'm assuming they're going to keep the same footprint, a 48-volt battery.
I'm assuming
the
that
same
they would.
size. I think our social media team has something they want to share with us here. No? Guys?
So I think he was talking about the recycling.
Oh, the recycling. Okay.
Oh, okay. That would make sense.
Okay, that would make sense. One more. YouTube, DeVille, I hope the future of vehicle batteries will be easily repairable batteries in the beginning of design. Anything improves. I can't imagine that we're going to continue to live with these gigantic 1,200-pound battery packs that are sealed so badly that you have to spend a half a day opening them up, doing body work on the cover. Serviceability is very important. And I think eventually the OEMs will get that right.
Yeah, I think the Lucid model of not necessarily even having a top to the battery, but having it simply sealed up against the car so that as soon as you drop the battery pack, you see the battery itself is much more the future than the Tesla 4680 model where you have, polyurethane foam all sprayed in between the batteries, and it's even less serviceable than some of the batteries they have now.
Yep.
On LinkedIn, Rolandus Remedica. In Sweden, I'm into EVs 150%, driving a Tesla Model 3, the part of the first delivery batch to Sweden. And good afternoon to you.
Good afternoon. Yes, Sweden, very close to Norway. We had actually a news item. The EV adoption in Norway is just unprecedented, off the chart.
Oh, yeah.
And it's one of the most difficult places to drive an EV because it's so darn cold. You're constantly heating inside the car.
It's cold and it's rural, much more rural than most of the other areas in Europe and in here in the United States.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, one of our customers is going to take a Tesla Roadster to Puerto Rico, and one of his concerns is that the roads aren't that great there. So he's going to make sure that he has some PPF, some clear bra in various areas. And so either this afternoon, we're going to, or tomorrow, we're going to have a couple of investors here that have actually 6 Roadsters stored here and are still in the business of investing in Tesla Roadsters. Mike Maloney and Dan Rubach, they have a channel that talks about investing. And if you really want to get to the nitty-gritty of how the financial systems on the planet work, the central banks, for example, and how they interplay and what the global situation is, Mike Maloney probably has the best grasp on that whole concept of anybody that I've ever read or met or heard. So they will be joining us. We'll be doing some videos this afternoon, and we'll be promoting their channel as well. It's definitely worth reading and viewing. Were you guys going to pop up the channel, the YouTube channel for Mike Maloney's investment?
I can. Yeah, give me one sec.
Yeah, let's do that.
And while you're doing that, we do have one more question from YouTube. This again is from the Bion Danish Genome Institute. How much silver and copper goes into a typical electric vehicle?
I don't know the quantities, but I can tell you can throw gold in there too, because the circuit boards inside the electronics, the preferred a connection method on the pins is usually gold because it's an excellent conductor.
Okay, I'm going to pull up their channel, and I have the amounts too. So this is just for EV batteries to answer that question. For the batteries, it looks like 25 to 50 grams of silver per vehicle. And then from the Copper Alliance, copper, you're looking at 83 kilograms. And then I did a converter because here in the U.S. we don't do that.
Yeah,
So,
we're not a metric
so it's about 182 pounds or 83 kilograms of copper.
Of copper, okay.
Okay.
So you can...
And then over here is Mike Maloney's channel, the Gold and Silver channel.
Excellent. So expect to hear more about these guys. They will be here. We'll have some videos that will be released. But again, if you're into or curious about how the global economic systems work, Mike is brilliant, and you can tell the success that he has. What he's got, 700,000 subscribers or something?
732,000, yeah.
732.
Over
okay.
886 videos total.
Wow. Okay, that's
a whole
way
lot
up
of
there as
content
well.
for investors.
Yeah. All right, so let's just wrap this then. Tomorrow we're going to have the Tesla Roadster podcast with Conrad Buck joining us, who has a roadster service organization in the middle or the center of Germany. Thursday, we are going to have our normal EV podcast at 10 Mountain Standard Time. And then next week, Thursday, we're going to have the author of the book, The Future is Electric, Ingemar Anderson, who is going to tell us about the book, what motivated him to write it, and what you can expect when you purchase and read it.
Thank you guys so much for joining us today, and we look forward to talking to you again tomorrow.
Thank you.